I wanted to do a little video all about printing. In the lockdown, the COVID-19 lockdown, if you're watching this later, I spent a bunch of time really trying to hone my printing skills. So I've been working with Canon to try out the Pro 1000 printer, and I wanted to run you through the paper that I use, how I calibrate, and how I get the best results for printing. I'm working on putting together an exhibition that will be showing in Cape Town next year. It's some images I made in Namibia a while back, and I wanted to print those myself as an exercise for me to pick up this important skill. So you get this box shipped to you. It's huge, it's heavy, but it's very exciting because inside is like the first proper printer that I've ever owned. I'll spare you the very awkward when you have to lift it out with two people and place it carefully. But let's just say, get it, don't try to do this by yourself, get another person, lift it out, and I'm going to show you where I put it in my studio. I've set the printer up right by my desk. The connection and the setup was super easy. If you get stuck, there's lots of videos online about how to actually set it up, but it connects to Wi-Fi. I'm using a wired connection. My main thing about placement is I wanted to put it in a place it doesn't get moved. That's so I don't have to reset it up and make sure my print heads don't go out of alignment and all those kind of things. So I've got this spot that I really love for it, and the prints can come out and they're not gonna bash into anything. This is my whole printing station. I've got a Canon Pixma IP110 that I got years ago for printing just documents and things, because I don't want to use the expensive ink to do that. And as you would expect from like really high quality printing, you have really high quality cartridges. Honestly, they're quite expensive, but the great thing is on these cartridges you have 12 ink tanks, which means if you're using a lot of cyan or a lot of orange, and you'll see I have a lot of like orange prints, so the red and yellow, I could just replace just those, and you can buy them online for much cheaper than buying the variety pack. So that's a thing, that's a real benefit you get from printing like with these giant printers that do a lot more, and that's one of the things I also really like to make use of. So let's get right into calibration, my paper choice, and actually do some prints. For the exhibition I'm working on, I tried out a bunch of different papers, and I'm looking for kind of the texture to see the feeling. Generally, I'm gonna go with, I've always printed on cotton rag, which is kind of a fine art paper that has a bunch of texture and makes your pictures look very painterly, and my clients absolutely love it. And for this exhibition, because the kind of texture already is in the images, I went with the smooth cotton rag because I don't need the paper to give me as much texture. It's from the Ilford gallery series, and it actually comes on a roll, which is really convenient because the printer is 17 inches wide, but usually paper is cut 17 by 22 inches. But in this case, I could also print a panorama, so anything longer. There's no limit on how long my images can be, but they can be 17 inches wide. So I tried making prints, small test prints, on lots of different types of paper so that I could figure out which one I like the most, and it really is just a personal choice. I use a rotary cutter to cut off the roll. I just cut off the piece to the size that I need, and voila, I print it. One of the things that I need to watch out for is because it's been stored on a roll, it's usually got a kind of natural bend. So to counteract that and make it go through the printer really smoothly, I just cut the piece at the size I need it, and then I lay it flat until it by itself flattens out on a a smooth surface. Because I'm making this into an exhibition, I want to have the most control over my color. I've chosen my paper, I know what printer I have, I know which camera I shot it on, and I know what screen I'm displaying it on. Now, all of these are going to interpret color slightly differently, just like humans do. We see different shades of color. If we're all looking at something red, we all perceive it slightly different between our eyes and our brains. The same is true with the camera, the printer, and the screen. So, to find a way to bring that all even across the board, I use calibration. That helps the computer and the printer to know what we're seeing here is what I want to come out of the printer at the other end, and brings it all together. It can get complicated, keep it simple. I just bought the best tools that I can find so that I can calibrate easily. I'm using the X-Rite i1 Studio, and it's this device, and when you go through the process, you can watch videos online of how to do this. It prints out this little sample color sheet, and you actually use this, and then it finds out, I told the printer to print purple, but it's come out a little bit more red than purple, so then it's going to adjust. So it knows that the printer interprets purple in a different way than the screen does, for example. So that's the process. Now I've got my paper and everything together. I'm going to get the most control out of having a calibrated setup. And just as an aside on calibrating, I printed all these samples and different settings. It was kind of getting close, but I didn't quite get the result that I had seen on the screen. So I basically poured my entire ink tank onto the page, and I just wanted to put that there because calibration really actually saves you money because you don't need to do this. So I've got my file open in Photoshop, and to find the easiest way to make sure everything works easily is I'm going to select all my layers and use Command E on the Mac to flatten my layers. And I find that a flattened layer makes it really the easiest to print. It stops a bunch of problems that you could run into. And I'm going to go to and make my image size the right size. So I could go 17 inches wide, but I want a little bit of a white frame around the image. So I'm going to go to 16¼ inches, and you see our other dimension auto adjusts here. So I'm at like 25 basically, including that border that I want, the white border. And the great thing about printing from a roll is the pre-cut paper is usually 17 by 22. So I couldn't do that. I would go off the long edge, but because I'm printing from a roll, I can make those wider images. So I've got my image exactly at the right size. I go up here to File, Automate, and then I go to Canon Print Studio Pro. So you can download that for free from the Canon website. And it's this dialog window that has all the settings that you need. And when it loads here, I'm going to show you, I'm going to make the paper size. I made a paper size of 17 by 26, which is what I cut the paper to when I cut it. I'm just going to go through and make sure, okay, here, this is, I don't want Paper Pro Platinum. I want Photo Paper Premium Fine Art Smooth. That's what I found is the closest to what I'm using. I'm going to go in the manual feed. There's the top feed and the manual feed at the back of the printer. Print quality the highest. And then this is what matters from a calibration. I'm going to use the ICC profile. And then this is the printer calibration that I made earlier. And then for rendering intent, this has to do with how it actually renders the colors in addition to like how to interpret the color profile. So it's just another layer of control that you can have. And I prefer perceptual, but sometimes relative colorimetric works. You can do your own tests on that. And then I just go ahead and print. It's going to give me all these dialogues, but it already does the layout for me, so I know how it's going to end up looking on the page. And if you're eagle-eyed, you will have seen the low ink notice already, because I've done so many test prints that it's giving me the low ink dialog. The good thing about this is it's not stopping me from printing, because it's low ink, it's not no ink. So the printer gives me also a little, in the settings on the printer itself, it gives me a little preview of how much ink is actually left in the ink tanks. So again, you're getting a much more use out of the fact that you can replace the individual ink tanks. So that's it. Now I'm going to send it over to the printer. Let's see how it looks when it comes out. So I've sent the image to the printer, and I've loaded my paper in the manual feed tray. There's also the top feed tray, but I find the manual feed tray is better for the paper that comes off the roll. And then the printer is going to ask me to confirm to go ahead, so I'm going to go ahead and press the print button. So it's going to process that for a while. While it's doing that, I want to talk a little bit about the economics of what's involved here. I do about $2,500 to $3,000 worth of print orders. So that's how much money I'm paying every year to a printer. I figured in lockdown, I'm going to have a large benefit because I've got some time. You know, we're in the COVID time when this video was filmed, for me to learn this new skill. So that's also why I made all those test prints, and I kind of enjoyed that process. The printer is, you know, the outlay, if it makes sense for you if you're sending that much money over to an external printer. If you're doing 10 print orders a year, I don't think the economics of it really makes sense. But for anyone that's getting into that process where you're doing a lot more printing work, this is absolutely fantastic. And the economics of it are going to work out. My margin for the amount of money I make from each print is going to go up because I'm doing my own. and I get to have that direct connection with my work, which honestly is the best part of it. Now, of course, we are all business people, which is why I'm going on and on about the margins and like making the economics work. I'm really, really enjoying making my own prints. It's like this magic thing when you have that beautiful large print come out, and for this exhibition in particular, it's really, really been nice to go through the whole process and also learn more about color. So what I'd say is, this is the right thing for you if you do a fair amount of prints and you can justify the price of the printer, the paper, and the ink through maybe 2 years worth of printing. If you can make a profit at the end of it, absolutely brilliant. If not, try to stick with the lab. They do a good job. If you have the space, this is an absolutely great project to do. The other thing that Canon does, which is really, really great, they have a piece of software you can install on your computer that lets you track how much paper you used, how much ink you used, and then if you share your studio with another person, you guys can kind of share the expenses, and that's what we're doing here. So yeah, that's the kind of wrap up for my printing. I'm really enjoying it. Maybe I'll make another video in a year or so, but in the meantime, I'm gonna get printing, get my exhibition ready, and fiddle with that while I have the time. And here it is, the final print. So let's have a look. Ah, lovely. So nice to hold an actual physical representation of your work. We see so much work just on digital. This is a real treat. So I'm gonna print the rest of the exhibition. I'm not gonna make a time lapse for each of those, but this is really, really much better than just sending it off to a printer and having it come back at some point and you don't know any of the process. So this is very nice.